with Nate Bailey.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back, Championship Leadership. And we got Dan Russell here today. And Dan's currently out of Vero Beach, Florida. Thanks for joining us today, man. Appreciate it.
Not a problem. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to start us off, all our guests off with this question. Championship Leadership's the name of the podcast. So what comes to mind for you, or what does championship leadership mean to you when you hear that?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is being a steward for the people who are following you and who rely on you. I think that's a big theme that I would place at probably the top of the list of what I would say is a champion leader would have.
Yeah, absolutely. What have you had some steward leaders in your life that have kind of been big impacts?
Yeah. I had a great boss right out of college that was like, I had just graduated with 2 majors in finance and one in technology management, and I got a job in marketing.
Yeah.
Just because I wanted to work at a startup. Like, that was the one thing I knew. Entrepreneurship was my path. I knew that I was going to be, running a startup someday, doing my own thing, owning my own business, and I wanted to just get in on the ground floor and see how everything worked. So, the guy that I got connected with through the career services offices at college was running his own business. It was like I was the second person to join the team, and I had no idea what I was doing. Right? No clue. I was in over my head at this marketing company with a degree in finance.
Yeah.
So as I found my footing, I started getting really passionate about it, and he saw that and gave me sort of like carte blanche access to learning and traveling and networking and meeting people and taking courses and just immersing myself in the craft of marketing so that I could get really good at my job, obviously.
Yeah.
And that set a tone for me of being able to just stretch my legs and really pursue my potential. And it also established for me early on, like 21, 22 years old, what a great leader should do to empower the people on their team. So eventually, when I started my own business, started hiring my own people, I did the same thing.
Yeah.
And that led to fierce loyalty, amazing results. That's never 100% perfect. Sometimes, people come and go. But overall, I always had good relationships with the people that I worked with. Yeah. And I knew that they were growing. So that stewardship is really the one that comes to mind. Again, it's just coming up again. But that would be that's sort of where I cut my teeth.
Well, why don't you take a little bit here to kind of talk about you and a little bit more about your path and kind of where you've gotten, how that's gotten you to where you are today. I know tomorrow, as we're recording this, it's what is it, the 22nd of August, 2022. But
12 hours away.
yeah, got a big launch coming up, so I'm sure you're super busy with that. And I see, if you're watching this, I think I see the book in the background there, but name of the book's Snake Oil. So why don't you give us a little intro for the listeners that aren't familiar with you?
Lay a bit of foundation. So I just gave sort of the spiel as far as how I got started in my professional career.
Yep.
But the 10 years sort of following that experience were me tripping over myself and continuing to do the networking and continuing to learn and trying to find a niche in this hugely saturated industry called marketing.
Yeah.
And eventually got really passionate about this area called neuromarketing, which is the intersection of brain science and traditional direct response marketing as you would see it in like a magazine or Facebook ads and stuff like that. So I tried to, I'm a very like analytical thinker. And so the idea that I could read research about how people make decisions and what makes people buy and what makes people say yes was fascinating to me. So I started moving my marketing agency, which is the business that I started, in the direction of understanding and harnessing these, what I eventually called neurotactics, in an ethical way to help other businesses succeed. And so that type of business is actually called a conversion rate optimization agency.
Okay.
So we would be brought into a company that says, hey, our checkout page isn't performing very well. Can you help us out? Or, hey, our engagement rates on social media have dropped. Can you help us out? Stuff like that. Time on site, like other things that need to be fixed, like places in the sales funnel where more people were leaking out. That's where we came in and we said, okay, we understand psychology. We understand the math of marketing. Let's go in and start running tests, split tests.
Yep.
So that's what we did for years and years and years. And I started building up all this research, and I started getting this intuitive understanding of how sales funnels worked and how websites worked and how people worked, and eventually began building all these systems. And over that period of time, I started getting a little bit exhausted of the agency life, because it is exhausting.
Yeah.
And it's very draining and it's very difficult to scale.
Right.
So I started thinking, okay, well, why don't I hit the brakes on that business model and start teaching? And so I did. I started consulting. I started putting together training programs. I started hosting workshops, all to teach people and other businesses how we did what we did. Like we over the course of those years unlocked over $50 million in revenue for our clients. And that was recurring revenue. So we had a lot of results to show. We just never showed people how to do it for themselves. And that's what I really focused my time on. Eventually that led to me writing a book, Snake Oil, which was born out of this frustration, disenchantment from the way that I had seen the marketing industry evolve over the years. Because from my standpoint, I was sort of like the really nerdy kid figuring out how all the mechanics works. And every so often over the years, I would look up and I would see people hyping things up and saying, oh, you need to try this new software platform. You need to do this new training program. You need to take my certification. You need to use this tool, this tactic. And I'm like, none of that actually makes a difference in people's marketing. I mean, maybe sometimes, but it's not a proof. Like my wife is more on the like woo-woo spectrum than I am.
Yeah.
So when there's, crystals and stuff that come into the conversation, I'm like, okay, I'm more clinical studies, like give me the trials and, show me the research.
Right.
Every so often she pulls me in and like, okay.
Sure.
But anyway, I like to see results, and I ran my business in a non-results oriented way for the first few years. And it got me like super frustrated, super beaten down. Nobody was happy because I didn't know what I was doing. And I see a lot of that as a pattern in the industry. And I saw a lot of it over the years. So, it got to the point where when clients would come to me and say, hey, can you help me out with this? I would also hear, I just got burned by another marketer. Or I've been, I listened to a keynote speech at Traffic and Conversion Summit and tried that strategy. And I've been, doing it for a year and still hasn't worked. Tried this tactic, tried this tool, tried this certification. I spent thousands or tens of thousands of dollars and it never worked. And I kept hearing that over and over and over again, to the point that I started thinking, like, somebody's got to say something about how hypey the digital marketing world has gotten. And
so
how
hypey.
saturated it is with all of these people just hawking their stuff on Instagram. So I merged that frustration with all of the stuff that I had built, which it ended up being, this book that I never intended to write, but as I started talking more and more about it with my wife, she's like, you got to write it down. You got to just like put it in a format that people can understand. And so the first half of the book is sort of a breakdown and a dissection of why the marketing industry is the way it is. The second half of the book is sort of the way out, or the like how to navigate the minefield through the systems that we had developed over the years at my agency. So that's where the book came from.
So who would you say the book's for?
Business leaders, primarily entrepreneurs. Like there's a lot of this stuff that is specifically for entrepreneurs, but it's also useful for marketing executives, people who are running large teams and who are outsourcing and hiring consultants and agencies to do their work for them, because there's a lot of red flags that you should be aware of as a person in that sort of role.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Love it, man. So so you weren't necessarily looking to write a book, but kind of came about.
It happened pretty organically.
Yeah. Got it. What's the vision for you as far as the book goes, and what you're looking to do with that?
Well, right now it's mostly a matter of just getting it out there. Right. I think, I had somebody at a networking event recently ask me point blank, after I said, I have a book coming out. He said, "What's your offer?" I'm like, dude, no, that's not the point. The point is to get the book out there. That is my goal. Like, there's not like a course you need to take after reading this thing. Is if you read it from cover to cover, you will emerge a better marketer. That is the reason that I wrote it. I'm not like, come to my event, once a year, or, pay me any amount of thousands of dollars to, get certified. No, the whole idea is to just deliver this value. Like I'm at a point where like, I want to share this knowledge that I have locked in my head that I know a lot of people could use. So that's really the reason.
Love it. Yeah. So when was how early on did you decide, to not be working for someone else? And when did you start your own thing?
Pretty soon after college. I think it was about 2 years out of college that I had already started my business. I had already started making money on the side.
Yeah.
I knew going in that it was part of the plan.
Yeah.
But I also was self-aware enough to know that I didn't know jack about what I was doing.
Yeah.
So I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, but fortunately had that level of clarity. I think about 2 years in to my first job out of college, I had started hosting local meetup groups and eventually met somebody that said, "Hey, can you help me with my marketing?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And they're like, "I'll pay you $1,000 a month." I'm like, "What? Cool." Like that was life-changing for me. And so that's how it started. And then I started getting more clients and eventually replaced my income and started the business.
Yeah. Got it. Well, let's come back. Kind of asked you this already as far as, who are some of the servant leaders that have impacted you, but, who are some of the coaches, mentors, leaders that have impacted you, and always more so like, what are some of the characteristics that really have stood out for you, directly, indirectly in your life, that you've kind of maybe taken some things from and helped to model who you are as a leader?
Yeah. Well, another one that comes to mind is I was in the Boy Scouts, and one of the guys that was in the leadership ranks of my local Boy Scout chapter, his name was Mike, and I still keep in touch with him to this day. He lives in Tampa, and he was how do I describe him? Wise enough to know where I was making mistakes and patient enough to know which mistakes I needed to make.
Yeah.
By that I mean, you know how you watch a child and or even a friend, and you see them about to make the same mistake that that you've made before, and they're going to stub their toe, or they're going to fall on their face, or they're going to encounter some sort of challenge. You it for a fact. And sometimes you can tell them, hey, you're about to stub your toe, or hey, you're about to lose a bunch of money, or hey, this thing's gonna happen. And sometimes you tell them. Other times that they just have to stub their toe.
Yeah.
And he had this intuition around when to tell me I was gonna stub my toe and when to let me stub my toe. I thought that was looking back on it, it was really epic. You could tell that he had really walked the path before to the point, and seen enough other people walk the path and led enough other people down that path to know when to pull the trigger on saying, hey, you're going to stub your toe, and when to hold back.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's, I don't know, in a way, kind of rare to find, right? I think
very rare.
Yeah. Because a lot of us as leaders would tend to want to be on top of you the whole time, right? And
sure,
doesn't allow you to grow, or not as quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you said, the goal for you is to really get this book out and just to create a lot of value. What are some of the ways that you're, going to do that? Especially for what you do, right? I mean, this is your thing.
This is the thing. I had given a lot of thought to how I was going to get it out there. Usually, and I'm in several entrepreneur groups, and when somebody launches a book, most of the time it's a boilerplate, hey, can you go buy my book and leave a review? And so I was thinking, I can't just do that. I'm launching the marketing book.
Right.
That'd be lame if I did that. I'm not, casting a shadow on anybody else's stuff, because they're not in that world. But
right.
I started thinking, how can I do this creatively? And really what I wanted was for the marketing of the book to display some of the principles that I teach in the book.
Sure. Yeah.
Ryan Holiday did this when he launched Trust Me, I'm Lying, which is a book about PR. And basically what he did was he used his strategies in his book to get PR about the book.
Yeah.
Did all sorts of things with billboards. And anyway, I read that and I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I want to do. And so right now I'm in the middle of a social campaign to have my friends and colleagues start these fascinating conversations about what I was talking about earlier in terms of frustration around the marketing world and con artists and just general over tacticization of this world. And so I have all of these posts that I've sent to my friends and said, hey, when this thing launches, just copy and paste this thing into your social media feed. And I will start a conversation and pull other people into that conversation, and will deliver value to your followers, and more people will see the link to the book. Win-win. So I'm doing this nonstop right now, and just queuing things up.
Yeah.
So that's really one of the ways that I felt super authentic, reaching out to my friends and saying, hey, instead of just doing this copy and paste job with a link to Amazon, let's do something fun. Let's have a conversation about this stuff that fascinates me. Hopefully it fascinates you. Hopefully it delivers a lot of value to everybody else in your circles.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny that you just mentioned Ryan Holiday's book, because I literally was talking to someone today, and they asked for some marketing books, And that was one that I just pulled up. I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
well, let me look through my audio library real quick. And so, yeah, I
Sharp guy.
just recommended that and a few others, but I'll have to recommend yours as well now that
Well,
we're
thank
here and
you.
talking about
Appreciate
it.
that.
So, what's I know we talked a little bit, maybe more so around the book, but for you, I think when I think of championship leadership and incredible leaders, I think they all have great vision and, more so probably some courage to take action on that. And so, yeah, what's your vision for what you are doing, and more so, maybe even short term, 5-10 years from now, and the impact that you really want to make with what you're doing? Because obviously you made that switch from the agency to consulting and teaching people how to do what you do.
I really want to democratize access to really quality marketing knowledge for businesses. I want to tear down the walls that people think they have to climb over to do good marketing and to access good marketing. This book is one step in that direction. The content that I produce is another step in that direction. Is sort of this is a continuation in my work towards that vision.
Yeah.
But it's also a more public version of that work, to be honest, because everything up until, everything over the course of the agency was totally private. The training and the workshops were like a little bit more public. This is like public. So now it's just getting out there more and more and more. And so that I just want that to snowball. That's really something that I see as an immense value, to just have a transparent conversation about the state of marketing, digital marketing, with business owners that are already frustrated about it. And they already know what's going on, but they don't really have a way out or way to navigate it or think about it, or, even admit it to themselves, right? There's a level of validation. Like whenever I talk about the stuff that I was talking about a few minutes ago, everybody's like, in the audience is like, yeah, I've been burned. Like, yeah, I see those ads. Like, totally. Yeah. Like, I see the hype. Yeah, totally. That's not normal. Yeah. No, I mean, it shouldn't be, but it is. And so just having those honest conversations is like so refreshing that, I'll keep doing that as long as I can. Yeah.
Well, you talk about going to school and kind of falling into marketing and not necessarily something that you were looking to do. And obviously, your path has continued you down that road. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably what happens for a large percentage of us, right? We end up doing something in this life that we maybe didn't necessarily see ourselves doing, or the plan we have for ourselves isn't always the one that we end up following. So what is it about this marketing world that really grabbed a hold of you and has you continued in it?
I've thought about that a lot, because there have been moments where I'm like, why don't I just become an engineer, like build Iron Man or something? Right, yeah.
Which also sounds awesome.
Which I may do still. Yeah. I don't know. But what's kept me in this world is that it's sort of, in my opinion, other than maybe product development, it's the hardest part of business. And this is my opinion. Yeah. Some people might find finance to be the hardest part. Some people might find leadership to be the hardest part. I find marketing to be the fastest moving target in entrepreneurship and business, because it's like so much is changing so quickly. There's new trends. People talk differently. There's new generations of kids coming out that think completely differently. You have to, there's so many factors and variables to consider that I really like being great at that, so that when I start new businesses, which I have, and new products, like I'm working with an incubator right now in based out of Miami, and there's all sorts of new products. Like, it's such a transferable skill that allows me to see the world from so many different angles. And I love that. Like the brainy side of me really, really hooks into that. And I
Sure.
can intellectualize it and emotionalize it all at the same time. It's just the art of human connection. And there's a science to it too. But, I think that it's just a fascinating thing to chew on.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What is there, like I guess I kind of refer to it as a critical moment, right? So, a fork in the road for you that you've been through. I think we all have a number of these in our life, right? Some that really stand out more than others. And obviously you made the decision that you did that has you where you are today, but had you chosen differently, being in a much different place, what is there a moment or two that you could share? I think there's a lot of people, especially, before we came on, right? You talked about COVID and how that, how that resulted in you making a move and doing some things differently in your life with you and your wife. And there's a lot of people going through those moments, and they always want to know, right, the result before they make the choice or the decision, which isn't always the way it goes. But there's strength in learning from others and how they decided in certain moments. So is there one or two you could share with us to help with the listeners?
Yeah, I think the first would be a few years, not that long into starting my business. I had received a line of credit and I used it, and I didn't waste it. It was all placed into networking and traveling to meet the right people. It's not like I bought a car or anything like that. But I think there was like $25,000 on that line of credit, and I had a plan for interest and principal payments and all that stuff. Like I'm a finance major. Like I knew how to do that sort of stuff.
Right.
I basically looked at it as a business loan.
Sure.
And which in many ways it was. But then I heard back from the bank, which shall remain nameless, that they were calling it due all at once. I'm like, what? I'm sorry. Did I miss something about the word loan?
Yeah.
Like, well, technically line of credit, you can call it due. And
yeah.
So I didn't know that. And I didn't have $25,000 in the bank.
Right.
So I was basically, forced into a corner. Like it went into collections. I was like, I'm going to have to declare bankruptcy. My cash flow is not going to cover this. Like I had basically just gotten to the point where I was able to leave that job.
Yeah.
So I was making a couple grand a month.
Right. Yeah.
And so I called up I got the collections calls, and they say, hey, so you have this $25,000, which by that point I believe it had like ballooned with interest payments to over 28, maybe 30.
Sure.
And I told him, like, I don't know what to do. Tell me, like, let's talk. They said, okay, we're not going to charge you any more interest. We're going to set up a payment plan. And it was like the payment plan was essentially everything that I made at that time.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't have food on the table.
Yeah.
So I had to make a decision. Like, do I go and, ask my parents for money? Do I like try to get another loan, which I knew is not possible? Like I didn't even I completely at a loss.
Yeah.
And so I decided one night that I was going to hustle my way out of it. And so I got to work leveraging those networks that I had invested in, reaching out to people, putting together new offers, putting together new packages. I still didn't really know how to describe what I did because I was doing everything for everyone at the time. Learned that lesson later down the line. But eventually I got to the point where I was able to make the payment and then make a little bit of money to survive, to pay rent and food and so on. And that was like 18 months of doing that.
Yeah.
Of just like hustling
my
butt off.
Yeah.
Eventually got to the point where it was fully paid off, and then, everything was better at that point. But
Right.
yeah, that was a harrowing that was a harrowing year and a half. So
yeah. So you didn't run from it though. You obviously, you kind of, it motivated you to, was that a
yeah,
blessing? Did you look at it as a blessing?
I
Looking
do.
back now in the moment, I'm sure
Man,
you didn't.
it's a tough, that's a tough pill to swallow, but yes,
Yeah.
I do. And, I've always been on the side of, I'd rather make $1,000 mistake than $100,000 mistake. And I'd rather make $100,000 mistake than a $10 million mistake. So I think I probably made a couple of $1,000 mistakes that
Sure.
could maybe
Yeah.
in the future have turned into several $1 million in mistakes. So
Yeah.
you never know. You
Right.
never know.
Right. Yeah.
I would say the second big crossroads was the decision to change up my business model at the
Yeah.
agency and start training and consulting. That one was completely born out of burnout.
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Sure.
I had just burned the candle at both ends. I was done. I was laying on the floor. My wife walked in the room and she's like, "What's going on? What's wrong, honey?" I'm like, "I am just so done." I don't know if anybody listening here or if you've been at a point of burnout, but
Yeah.
it's just like you just want to give the world the finger.
Yeah.
and just shut it all down, burn it down. And I actually called one of my good friends who also ran an agency, and I said, "Dude, I'm about to blow this thing up. I'm literally about to just cancel every contract. I don't care. Like, I don't care."
Yeah.
And he's like, he gave me some good advice. He said, "You can absolutely do that.
Yeah.
And if you do, then all of your problems from the business will be solved, but then you'll introduce new problems. How do you replace your income? How do you do all these things?" And so what he said was, picture yourself 6 months down the line, and there are two scenarios. You've burned it down, or you have found another solution. In the burned it down scenario, are you happier or more miserable than if you had found another solution? And I'm like, I'm probably going to be more miserable. So I started thinking like, okay, let's take a breath, sleep it off, readdress the situation the next day.
Yep.
And so that's where I started thinking, okay, well, I have all of this intellectual property. I have all of this research. I still like this work. I still enjoy it. I just don't like this business model.
Yeah.
And so that's where the idea for the workshop and the consulting came up, and that just led to a completely new source of income, more scalable business model, all around better result. And that was just because of my friend's advice of, just like play out the scenarios.
Were you able to sell that business, or
it ended up being the same business? It was I transitioned some of my agency service clients into consulting clients.
Yeah.
I offloaded some clients that I didn't like.
Sure.
And then I introduced new offers, like the marketing scientist workshop was our first major offer. That was a group program, and I reached out to our past clients. I reached out to new people and started marketing it, and so that started gaining traction.
Love it. That's cool. Very good, man. Well, as we get close to wrapping this up, if there's one or two things, maybe, potentially from your book, that if the listeners were to implement today into their life, into their business, it would help move their life forward today, what are one or two of those things?
Well, I would say two things. First is that marketing is actually a lot simpler than many would want you to believe.
Mm-hmm.
The system that I teach in the book is called a marketing operating system, and I spent it literally took me 10 years to get to the point of knowing that this was actually an all-encompassing system, but there are only 3 moving parts. There's customers, campaigns, and conversions.
Mm-hmm.
And without going into too much detail, if you know who your customers are, you know what your campaigns are, which means you know how to get their attention, and you know how your conversions work, which means you can convert that attention into sales, all of your marketing challenges will be over, right?
Yeah.
Now, that's a very simplistic way of explaining that, but it's also a little bit refreshing because you realize that the tactics are secondary to that strategy.
Sure.
To the focus on those 3 moving pieces. The second thing I would say is, and I mentioned this a little bit ago with regards to the art and the science of marketing, it really is like a yin and a yang balance between the art of marketing, which is the emotion and the connection and like how to speak to people. You know, Super Bowl commercials can make people cry in 30 seconds.
Right.
That's astounding.
Yeah.
Right? That is the art of marketing. Then there's the science, right? The numbers and the math. If you can balance those 2 sides, you will be an incredible marketer. If you get too far on one side, like if you get too far on the science side, then your marketing will be cold. It might make a little bit of money, but it wouldn't make as much money as if you had incorporated a lot of emotion in the art. If you get too artistic, then you'll never make money. Right. So you've got to have that balance. And the best marketers, the best entrepreneurs, the best marketing leaders, they know what that balance feels like and what it looks like and how to manage it. And that's part of why I put the marketing operating system together and wrote the book. But if you can just build this intuitive sense of those 2 sides, then you're going to be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I love it. That makes sense. And like to your point, you know, especially in the social media world, if you're in certain circles, it does. Sometimes these marketing gurus, they can. I think a big part of it is them making you feel like you can't do it on your own, and you need someone like them to do it. And it's and you believe
there's a huge dependence. Or sense of and
I'm sure there's a fine, nice mix of both in there. But
yes.
Yep. Well, I appreciate your time here today. Where can we get a hold of the book, and how can the
book is available at snakeoilbook.com, and it's available on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, but all the links are on snakeoilbook.com. And I invite you guys to go check it out. Love it if you took it a read.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get that posted up so everybody can get to that easily. And appreciate you being here today, Dan. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This has been great. With Nate, babe.